Dan Morgan said the Panthers had obvious needs on the defensive side of the ball, and, well, he didn't waste any time trying to fix it.
You are Locked On Panthers, your daily Carolina Panthers podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome into another edition of the Locked On Panthers podcast, a part of the Locked On Podcast Network. I'm your host, as always, Julian Council, talking Carolina Panthers with you every Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and yes, of course, Friday, your team every day. That's our motto here on the Locked On Podcast Network. Thanks for watching the show here on YouTube, where I'm going to be live throughout the week here, breaking down the legal negotiating period and the start of free agency for your Carolina Panthers. If you ever miss a live episode here on the show, that's okay. It's going to be right there on YouTube and also in your podcast feed. So wherever you listen to your favorite podcast, be sure to listen to the show there. And thanks for following me on Twitter and at Blue Sky, where had some issues today with Twitter, X, whatever you want to call it, at Julian Council. Follow me there. Follow me also on Blue Sky at Julian Council, because on Fridays throughout the offseason, maybe not this Friday because there's going to be a lot of news going on, but I'm still planning on answering mailbag questions. Probably just going to have extra shows this week, either at me or DM me over on Twitter at Julian Council or at me on Blue Sky, where I'm going to answer your weekly Friday mailbag questions all throughout the offseason. So get those questions in over on Twitter or Blue Sky to be a part of this week's edition of the weekly Friday mailbag right here on Locked On Panthers. And what a show I have for you today. Very excited. One of my favorite times of the year. We spend the last month and a half after the season ends just discussing all of the needs the Panthers have and what they possibly could do during free agency and during the draft. And to finally get here, it's invigorating, man. So I'm excited to talk about all the moves the Panthers made. As Daniel Jeremiah, he tweeted out on Sunday, the Panthers should be fun to watch on Monday, the first day of the legal negotiating period. And I don't know about you, but I had fun, and yeah, maybe the heartstrings were pulled on a little bit more than you wanted to, as you felt like the Panthers made a big move, a monumental move as far as Milton Williams go. And we'll talk about that later on the show. But before the legal negotiating period window even opened at noon Eastern time on Monday, the Panthers had made history, signing Jaycee Horn to a 4-year, $100 million contract with $70 million fully guaranteed, that extension kicking in next season in 2026. He becomes not just the highest paid corner in the NFL right now, but the highest paid defensive back in the history of the National Football League. And I don't know about you, but I certainly did not have that on my bingo card, that Jaycee Horn was going to become the highest paid defensive back, and yet the highest paid corner in the NFL this season and in history, like ever. So that was one of the big moves Carolina made to start off today. And man, he had a hell of a year this past season, named to his first Pro Bowl, played more than 1,000 snaps for the first time in his career, 1,036 to be exact. That was 98% of the team's total defensive snaps that he was able to play this past year. And all that comes after only playing in 22 out of 51 games in his first 3 seasons as a Panther. There was a lot of conversation that we had this time last offseason heading into April and right at the beginning of May of whether Carolina should exercise a 5th-year option on JC. One thing that we knew was that when he played, he's a dog. Like, that's somebody that can help you win games. When you look at the rest of the cornerback room, it's like, okay, CJ Henderson's leaving. Dante Jackson got traded away. They need JC to stick around and be that long-term option as Dante's gone. CJ never worked out. The Stephon Gilmore situation, that was only a couple of weeks back in 2021. JC had to be that cornerstone piece for Carolina at corner. And I wrestled with it because I looked at the fact that he had missed 29 games. That I understood that maybe it's the broken foot. You had the broken wrist that cost him the end of that 2022 season. You have to wonder, had he started that game back in week 17 on the road against Tampa in 2022, are the Panthers not division champs? Is Steve Wilkes not the head coach right now in Carolina? The world may never know. Well, we certainly won't know what happened there, but that was an unfortunate thing to happen as we watch Keith Taylor and CJ Henderson get cooked all day by Tom Brady and by Mike Evans on that Sunday afternoon. That was the de facto NFC South title game. So you had seen JC's value. he just couldn't be available. And we always heard it, that the best ability is availability. He has all the ability in the world, just not the ability to stay on the field up until this past season. And yes, he missed the final 2 weeks of the year, and you hate to see that. Would have loved for him to have played the full 17, but he showed you more than enough and showed the NFL more than enough that he was worthy of being a Pro Bowler. And the Panthers gamble, which they made last season, where they picked up the $12.4 million option, which he's going to play on here in 2025. Had they not done that, they would have been looking at a potential $20 million franchise tag had they not come to terms with JC prior to the franchise tag deadline. That was last week on the 4th. So they were able to go ahead, make the decision to keep JC Horn around for that 5th year, even if he was going to be banged up again in 2024, because they believe that if he could just play, that he would show his talent, and he certainly was able to do that this past season. And now they have rewarded him with a 4-year, $100 million contract, $70 million guaranteed, $25 million per year. Again, the highest paid defensive back in the history of the NFL. When we talk about Spot Track and look at the market values, the market value they had for Jaycee Horn was 4 years, $78 million, average annual salary of 19.6. And we've had the conversation up here on the show. I didn't think he was only going to get $19 million. That's not even top 5 corner money entering into the market when everything opened up today. JC was going to get, I thought, around 23, 24, right around what Jalen Ramsey, who was the former highest paid defensive back and corner in the league, making 24.1. Pat Surtain, who was drafted one spot behind JC, 9th overall back in 2021. He's been a 3-time Pro Bowler, 2-time All-Pro, the 2024 Defensive Player of the Year. I know a lot of fans out there have wondered what Carolina could have done instead if they would have gotten Pat Surtain out there instead of Jaycee Horn. Surtain has been able to stay healthy and has played some high-level football out there in Denver. Last year in September, he signed a 4-year, $96 million extension. And understanding the fact that the cap goes up every year, that teams are able to pay guys more down the road. And that's what happened in this situation. While JC has not had the accolades of Pat Surtain, he certainly has the background where Pat Surtain's dad, Patrick Surtain Sr., played in the NFL, and Jaycee Horn's dad, Joe Horn, played in the NFL. So he has those bona fides, that legacy, and he came in as a top 10 pick like Surtain, and when healthy, he's played at a high level. Now, has he played at the 2-time All-Pro, the Defensive Player of the Year level? Not yet, but Carolina's paying him this money because this is who they think he will be moving forward, of course, provided that he stays healthy. So I have no problem at all with this contract. Maybe just $2 million per year more than what I would have thought he would have gotten. But again, the cap went up, and when the cap goes up, so do contracts. So now Jaycee Horn, $25 million per year. Jalen Ramsey at 24.1, Pat Surtain at 24, Jair Alexander at 21, AJ Terrell at 20.25. Those are the top 5 highest paid corners in the National Football League right now. And the cap ramifications, we talked about that throughout the last couple of weeks on the show, what this would mean for Carolina. Looking at overthecap.com, by extending Jaycee Horn, the Panthers could potentially open up $9 million of salary cap space. So looking at Mike K over on Twitter at Mike_E_KAYE, who was on the show yesterday breaking down free agency and what to expect ahead of time. He pointed out that the contract extension for Horn will only save the Panthers roughly $5 million in salary cap space. And looking over at overthecap.com right now, 26.2 is what they have projected. So 31.2. And that's not, of course, taking into account the other deals that Carolina has agreed to, which will become official on Wednesday afternoon at 4 p.m. Eastern time as the new league year and a free agency officially begins in the NFL here in 2025. So big time move that Carolina has made here by investing in Jaycee Horn. And think about this too. And the money, it might seem crazy to you when you look at how many games he's missed. And even though he had a Pro Bowl year, he still couldn't play a full season this past season, even though I look at like 15 games at this point in time and how they want to probably add an 18th game eventually. Like that's a full season, knowing the physicality of this game, and a lot better than only 3 games or 7 games that you've gotten in the past from Jaycee Horn here in Carolina. But when you look at this as well, like they paid Christian McCaffrey, a franchise cornerstone, and then traded him away. They paid DJ Moore, a franchise cornerstone, and traded him away. They balked at giving Brian Burns $30 million a year last year and let him go. You're seeing homegrown talent over the last couple of years leave. Players like McCaffrey and Moore, who you don't think they could have helped out the rookie quarterback, whether it would have been Bryce or not, back in 2023, you're moving on from these guys to chase after a quarterback. You're moving on from Burns. And yes, it might have helped you go out there and sign Robert Hunt and sign Damian Lewis last offseason, but it left a gaping hole at edge that is quite honestly still there. And we'll talk about the moves that Carolina made here today when it comes to edge rusher later on here on the show. But still, they hadn't kept those guys around. And you were wondering, are they ever going to sign guys that they have brought around and drafted and developed? And they did that last March, later on at the end of that week of free agency, where they extended Derek Brown a $24 million per year deal, making one of the top 5 highest paid defensive tackles. And now we're seeing just a year later, they have now made Jaycee Horn the highest paid defensive back. So I love to see that homegrown talent, first round top 10 talent is staying in Carolina and that they're not being shipped off. As of now, of course, knock on wood, but I think that now with Brant Tillis, Dan Morgan here, that nasty trend that Carolina had is going to finally go away. And that was not the only move that Carolina made as it pertains to their secondary heading into 2025. On Monday, they signed former Raiders safety Tre'von Moehrig to a 3-year deal worth $51 million. That could be up to $60 million, so $17 million per year. Looking at Spot Track, the place of contracts, they had his market value at 3 years, $47 million, average annual salary of 15.7. So he gets more than what they projected. And again, we look at Spot Track just as a benchmark of what it potentially could be. They always put out contracts that are similar. So when we had the conversation a couple weeks ago about JC, I felt like it'd be more of the 23, 24 million just because I looked at what AJ Terrell got as he got 20.25 million. And JC had been a better player than Terrell, had been younger also than AJ Terrell. And he was going to get signed with the cap being higher. And then same thing with Pat Surtain. They had been right there, same draft slot, but he had not necessarily been healthy enough to achieve the success that Surtain had. So I felt like it'd be 23, 24 million. And now looking at this, it works out for Carolina. We knew when talking to Mike Kay on the show yesterday that it was going to be Moehrig or Javon Holland, 2 guys that they were going to be aggressive in going out there and trying to obtain. And I haven't looked at my phone recently, but it looks like Javon Holland still is not signed, and there's a possibility the Panthers could double dip, considering that they did miss out on Milton Williams and all that would have cost to obtain him, and that could be a possibility because of the versatility that Holland and Moehrig both have and how they're different players. So that could still work out. Again, haven't seen whether he's been signed or not, but just want to put that out there. But Moehrig's coming to Carolina, a big move. Started 64 games during his 4 years in Las Vegas after being drafted in the 3rd round out of TCU. 104 tackles this past season, 5 tackles for loss, 2 interceptions a year ago. He has 6 career interceptions, has a 99.1 career passer rating when targeted. Looking at his PFF grade from a year ago, that's Pro Football Focus, 67.5. That was 36 out of 98 safeties. Pass rush grade was 70.1. That's 8 out of 24 safeties. So a nice little element there that Jero Avero can utilize this upcoming season. This is a big one. Run defense grade, 87.5. That's 6 out of 93 safeties. Look at last year. Nick Scott, Xavier Woods, Jordan Fuller, all of those guys struggled with tackling a year ago. That's not going to be a problem anymore at that safety spot as it pertains to Tre'von Moehrig now being here in Carolina. And that's something that Mike brought up yesterday when he called him a dog, talked about he was going to be somebody who could come up and be a run stopper after the Panthers had the worst run defense in the history of their franchise, worst run defense in the NFL last season. Coverage grade leaves a lot to be desired, 54.4, 72nd out of 94 safeties. But compare what he did last year to what the safeties in Carolina who were here last year did that are now departing. Again, 36th out of 98 safeties. Woods was 77th. Fuller was 82nd. Scott was 86th. So some of the lowest graded safeties in the NFL were playing here in Carolina this past season. Damani Richardson, as an undrafted free agent rookie who started at the end of the season, had a 60.1 grade. That was 66. He was the best safety as a UDFA rookie out of A&M. So you have him coming back, and now you put Tre'von Moehrig in there. And again, speaking of missed tackle percentage, Tre'von Moehrig looking at PFF, 7.4 last year. Xavier Woods, 10.8. Jordan Fuller, 10.9. Damani Richardson, 11.9. Nick Scott, 21.2. So a significant upgrade in tackling skill and ability and physicality that Carolina now gets at that safety spot with Tre'von Moehrig coming in there to start this upcoming season. Again, 3 years, $51 million, could be up to $60 million based off of incentives. So the Panthers check 2 boxes in their secondary, 2 boxes they had on the offseason to-do list. They've extended Jaycee Horn, opened up some cap space, looks like $5 million according to Mike Kay, and they have signed a brand new safety. And there's still a possibility they could draft one as well. Mike brought that up on yesterday's show, and I think a potentially double dip, go get a guy like Javon Holland if he's still available as I'm recording this live here on YouTube. But that was not just the biggest news that Carolina made all day. They were a part of a bidding war for former Philadelphia Eagles defensive tackle and Super Bowl hero Milton Williams, and unfortunately they didn't get him, but they were able to add another piece on the interior defensive line. We'll talk about that here in just a moment on Locked On Panthers. This show is sponsored by BetterHelp. Taking care of your mental health can feel like a big investment, but it's just as important as taking care of your body. Traditional in-person therapy can cost anywhere from $100 to $250 per session, but with BetterHelp, you can save up to 50% per session. BetterHelp offers a flat fee for weekly online therapy sessions, making professional support more accessible and affordable. With over 30,000 therapists and over 5 million people helped, it's the world's largest online therapy platform. Your well-being is worth it. Visit BetterHelp.com/lockdown today to get 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/lockdown. Back here on Locked On Panthers, day one of the legal negotiating period is not yet over. It's 6:19 as I'm live here on YouTube. I'll be live throughout the week following all of these days. We have day 2 of the legal negotiating period on Tuesday, day 1 of free agency, and really day 3 if you want to really look at it. But it truly starts 4 p.m. on Wednesday. It'll be live throughout the week talking about the Panthers' moves that they make, looking ahead to what they could potentially do. And on Friday, going to have an extra show, probably going to do 6 shows this week. So on Friday, we'll have a show answering your weekly Friday mailbag questions. So I'll tell you right now, at me or DM me over on Twitter at Julian Council, as long as that it's working, and at me over on Blue Sky at Julian Council, and try to save some of those questions until about Wednesday, because there's been plenty of people asking me about, oh, what do you think about this move? It's like, okay, well, potentially move that. What do I think about the potential move that Carolina could make? And then, well, that player coming off the board like a couple of hours later. So just be a little bit patient as far as asking me some of these questions, but I will answer your questions on Friday. I'll probably record the show the day of and get those to you later on Friday afternoon for your commute home, for all the folks who do listen to this in the car when driving back from work. But I appreciate everybody here. 250 people live with me on YouTube right now. The Panthers appeared to be on the brink of making a massive franchise tilting move on Monday afternoon, on the second hour of the legal negotiating period. And there's a reason why Milton Williams was in the thumbnail on YouTube for the free agency preview that I did with Mike Kay. Of course, Mike mentioned Milton Williams, but I had conversations with other people, and it was very clear to me from all the people I'd spoken to that Milton Williams was going to be a priority for the Carolina Panthers. And at 1:10 p.m. Eastern time, Adam Schefter put out the tweet that we all wanted to see. The Panthers are working to finalize a deal with Milton Williams. Now, the problem was they were working to finalize a deal that they had not finalized a deal. At 1:24 p.m., Diana Rossini, who was quote tweeting her colleague Joe Person of The Athletic, who of course covers Carolina Panthers, Joe was saying that the deal was done, but Diana came and said, this is close, this is not done. Then 11 minutes later, at 1:35 p.m., Caden Steele, who apparently covers the Eagles for NewJersey.com, I'm not familiar with his work, but great scoop by him, as he's the first one to put this out here. He said the Eagles free agent defensive tackle Milton Williams is in talks with the Arizona Cardinals and the Minnesota Vikings, according to a person with knowledge of the situation. The deal with the Panthers is not done. So that made it very clear that there was still something hanging up here, probably financially, when it comes to Milton Williams. And understand this. This is the guy who's entering into free agency for the first time, his first chance to really get paid, and coming off of a Super Bowl where he had 4 tackles, 2 sacks, and one of those was resulting in a fumble. So forced fumble, 4 tackles, 2 sacks, a hell of a day during the Super Bowl against the Chiefs down there in New Orleans. So this is a guy who has his ring. Now it's time to get his money, and he was clearly going to go to the highest bidder. And we find out later on at 2:10 p.m. Eastern time, exactly an hour after Adam Schefter had told us the Panthers were finalizing a deal for Milton Williams, that the Patriots are taking the biggest defender off the market, signing him to a $26 million per year deal, which, buddy, that's a lot of money for Milton Williams. Let's be honest, because raise your hand if you knew who Milton Williams was this time last year, because I didn't. I'm just going to be honest with you. I didn't know who the hell this guy was until watching this season. It's like, oh, you know what? Buddy's pretty good for the Eagles, and that would be kind of nice having to come to Carolina. But for $26 million, yeah, that just to me, when finding out that money, that what the final total was, does not surprise me that the deal did not get finalized in Carolina, considering that, well, like 2.5 hours earlier, they had paid Jaycee Horn $25 million per year, and a year earlier, they had paid Derek Brown at the same position $24 million to make him a top 5 defensive tackle. And Dan Graziano, an ESPN NFL insider, went on SportsCenter earlier on today talking about that it was a bidding war between the Panthers and the Cardinals and the Patriots. Like, he never mentioned the Vikings. The Patriots, coming off of the tweet that was put out there by Caden Steele of NJ.com, they came out of nowhere. And understand this as well. The salary cap is important. I know we always like to talk about the cap isn't real. It is. Ask the Saints and how they're not making any significant moves right now. The Patriots, according to overthecap.com, are projected to have $121.8 million salary cap space. Carolina is projected to have 26.2, nearly $100 million difference in terms of cap space. Now, the Pats sucked ass last year. Drake May think he can be a good player. Mike Vrabel, I was there in Tennessee covering the Titans when he first came to town. Good coach. And they clearly effed up by getting rid of him last offseason as they're picking number 1 overall. And Callahan doesn't know what the hell he's doing. And even if he has his daddy there, Bill, to help him, they're not going to win games. Tennessee is a complete joke of an organization. Always have been, always will be. Congratulations, Amy Adams Strunk. But still, looking at it, the Pats had way more money to spend, and that is what this ended up being. As Carolina could have pushed some money down the road, like they did with Robert Hunt when they signed him to a $100 million deal last year, and kind of what they're probably doing with Jaycee Horn, as that deal's not kicking in until next season. I'm sure the cap it will probably be heavier for the final 3 years than it will be in 2026. They just did not have the same kind of liquid cash that New England had when it came to the salary cap. And again, Williams already has his ring. So once you have your ring, get paid. Because it doesn't matter. You got your Super Bowl ring. You can always say you're Super Bowl champion. Go out there, make as much money as possible. Of course, you'd like to win games, but if you're not winning games, so be it. You're going to be swimming in cash, looking like Scrooge McDuck for the rest of your life. So F it. Get paid. Sucks for Carolina. Obviously does, because this is a guy who has never been to a Pro Bowl, who's now the 3rd highest paid defensive tackle in the NFL. Like, Chris Jones is at $31.75 million. 6-time Pro Bowler, 3-time All-Pro, 3-time Super Bowl champion. He's the highest paid. Then Christian Wilkins, who I think is a good player, has $27.5 million. And then you put in, and he's never been to a Pro Bowl either, then you put in Milton Williams. He's not better than Nnamdi Madubuike up there in Baltimore, who's been a 2-time Pro Bowler, he's making 24.5. I don't know if he's better than Lane McNeil up in Detroit, 24.5, North Carolina boy went to state. Derek Brown, Quinnen Williams, better players, I would think, and they're both making $24 million. They've been to Pro Bowls. Quinnen's been an All-Pro and has been to multiple Pro Bowls. So that would be an overpay for Carolina. And Dan Morgan said he wanted to be aggressive, smart, but aggressive. And they were aggressive in getting Milton Williams. But the problem was it just became funny money. And they weren't going to make a move like that for a player who hadn't been here, wasn't a homegrown talent. They weren't going to spend that much money. And it would make no sense to give this guy more money than Derek Brown. But Derek Brown is a leader in the locker room, a captain, and a better player. So it sucks it didn't work out. Would have been a splash move for Carolina. But for $26 million, gonna pass. And Carolina did pass on that, but later on Monday, they went out there and they signed a player with familiarity with this coaching staff as they signed former Rams defensive tackle Bobby Brown III to a 3-year, $21 million deal that can go up to $27 million when you include incentives. So look at that. $26 million per year versus $7 million per year. And you can sit here and call the Panthers penny pinchers as you want, but again, it's simple math. The Pats had $121 million of cap space. The Panthers have $26 million projected. Kind of hard to go after players like that when a team has that much more cap space than you. But looking at Bobby Brown, the third, played in 49 games, starting 30 in his fourth season with the Rams after being drafted in the fourth round out of A&M, played in 17 games last year, starting 16, 44 tackles, 4 tackles for loss. His PFF grade was a 61.4. That was 47th out of 118 interior defensive linemen in 2024. Run defense grade of 65.7, which is big. 21st out of 140 interior defensive linemen. Pass rush grade of 55.5, 78 out of 97 interior defensive linemen. Only had 3 pressures last year. And I talked about the connection to the staff. Well, the Panthers just hired a new outside linebacker coach, an AC Carter, who comes over from LA. He's known to be a gun run stopper, and that goes to the 65.7 run defense. Great. Now compare him and Williams, as I believe people will do, looking at the money, $7 million for Bobby Brown III versus $26 million for Milton Williams per season. Like, that is a significant difference, of course. And Milton Williams is a better player. Understand all of that. But you already have one of the top 5 defensive tackles in the NFL. Would have been nice to have another one of those, a top 10, at least maybe another top 5 paid, but it didn't work out that way. Pressures, you're not going to get the pass rush that you were going to get with Williams at 40 last year, where Brown only had 3. And you look at it, though, like Ashawn Robinson had a career year as far as sacks goes last year, had 24 pressures. Derek Brown, the last 2 seasons that he's played fully in 2023 and in 2022, had 41 and 40 pressures respectively. So right there on par with what Williams did last year in Philly. But the run defense, that's a big thing to look at, as Panthers were putrid against the run last year, and honestly have been for like 5-6 years now. And they needed someone who can go up there and be a run stopper. Ashawn Robinson's known to be that. Derek Brown, we already know when he plays, has a 90 grade. He's an elite run stopper when he's out there. You bring in Bobby Brown III, 65.7 grade, compared to Williams, who, again, would have been a coup, 41.0 grade. And 4 times last year had a tackling grade in the 20s. And I didn't just come up with these stats to sit here and try to act like the Panthers did not miss out on Williams. They absolutely did. I had already written this down. This is stuff I was going to talk about, how they even been able to finalize that deal with Milton Williams. Just want to point out, though, it looks like that they got a better run stopper than Milton Williams, but they would have been able to add that element of having a really good interior pass rusher, someone who was versatile. You can move to the edge if you needed to. And unfortunately, that did not happen. But either way, they have upgraded. When you look at the fact that last year's defensive tackles graded out 77th, 96th, 108th, and 118th, according to PFF. Now you have a guy who graded out at 47th. And we're very close to getting a guy who was top 15 at 14th, and Milton Williams. Either way, the Panthers' defensive line has gotten better. You look at it now, Derek Brown coming back, Ashawn Robinson coming back, Bobby Brown III in there, and Shai Tuttle still on the roster as of now, going to be a backup. A much better situation Carolina is going to be walking into in 2025 than a year ago, and in a much better position to actually stop the run for the first time in 6 or 7 years than they were last year and, of course, years prior to that. So solid move. Unfortunate to not be able to get Milton Williams, but they still seem to get a very solid player who fits into the staff, fits into the scheme, and fills a need that Carolina had to fill during. See that getting taken care of. And Tommy Tremble or Austin Corbett, they are back. We'll talk about all that here in just a moment on Locked on Panthers. This is a message from sponsor Intuit TurboTax. Taxes was waiting and wondering and worrying if you were ever going to get any money back, and then waiting, wondering, and worrying some more. Now Taxes is matching with a TurboTax expert who can do your taxes as soon as today. An expert who gives your taxes their undivided attention as they work on your return, while you get real-time updates on their progress so you can focus on your day. An expert who will find you every deduction possible and file every form, every investment, everything with 100% accuracy. Also, you can get the most money back, guaranteed. No waiting, no wondering, no worries. Now this is Taxes. Get an expert now on TurboTax.com. Back here on Locked on Panthers live on YouTube, 354 of you with me right now. So thankful for every single one of you who watch the show here on YouTube, and everyone who listens to the show wherever they listen to their favorite podcast. Again, going to be live throughout the week here, throughout free agency, the legal negotiating period, day 1, still going on, as the Panthers could be making some more moves tonight. And let me just go ahead and peek over Twitter if it's working. It is, because today was kind of, oh, they have made another move. Who is this? Tershawn Wharton. Oh, my God. Hey, okay. So you probably were trying to tell me this as I don't look at the chat whenever I'm live because I don't want to get distracted. I already got my notes in front of me. The Panthers have gone out there and they have signed former Chiefs defensive lineman Tershawn Wharton to a 3-year, $54 million max deal with $30 million guaranteed. So more than 67% guaranteed at signing. Wow. Okay. So the Panthers, again, Daniel Jeremiah said it, should be a fun team to watch. Dan Morgan said it 2 weeks at the Combine. They knew that they had obvious needs on the defensive side of the ball. And, I mean, this is a minute ago. So, actually, this just happened looking at Mike Garofalo putting this out there on Twitter. Holy hell. What a day, man. So, don't know who this is, to be quite honest, y'all. So, let me go ahead and go over the PFF as we're talking to you live on this show because there's plenty of, like, I can only watch so many games. And some of these guys are just like, who is that? But he comes from the Chiefs, and that is the Brant Tillis effect right there as far as him coming. So, let's see. Let me toggle this, try and find Kansas City interior defensive lineman and see what his grades were. Okay, Tershawn Wharton was a 60.8 grade. This past year, that's 49th out of 118 interior defensive linemen, 87th out of 140 defensive linemen. And when it comes to run defense grade, so 48.1. Here's a good one right here because we talk about missing out on Milton Williams. Pass rush grade, 71.9. So 21st out of 97. And in coverage grades, not important. This is a guy now who comes in here who adds an element that you were going to get from Milton Williams. And now it kind of is a great pairing to where if you want to focus on early downs, stopping the run, it's A'Shawn Robinson, it's Derek Brown, it's Bobby Brown III. And when it comes to pass rushing downs now, it's going to be Tershawn Wharton, it's going to be Derek Brown, it's going to be A'Shawn Robinson, especially after what A'Shawn did last year. And then you got Shy Tuttle back there as a backup. So the rotation gotten a lot stronger for Carolina on the defensive line. And that's massive. And let me look at his premium stats also to see what his number breakdown as far as pressures were this past season in Kansas City. He had 42 pressures. So that's more than what Milton Williams had in oh my God, he had 9 sacks. Okay. Who the hell is this guy? 9 sacks last year. Okay. Well, PFF, they always round up. So he might have not actually, he had 6.5 sacks. So, okay. They got that one wrong. I don't know why they do that. You got to go to Pro Football Reference to actually get the real stat numbers, but they're crediting him with 9 sacks on PFF. I'm not going to do that because no. So 42 pressures, 6.5 sacks this past season, starting 10 games for KC, and he is listed at 6'1", 280. So wow. What a move. That's a big time move for Carolina. That's huge. So they have probably crossed off defensive tackle for the draft. So anyone asking me about Mason Graham or Kenneth Grant or Walter Nolan, stop. No need anymore, it feels like, because they have gone out there and they have signed 2 veterans, have Derek Brown, one of the top 5 defensive tackles in the NFL, coming back this season, have A'Shawn Robinson set to come back. I'm assuming Shy Tuttle is going to agree to a rework deal to come back and be a backup. So thinking about that now, this could be a stout defensive line after being the worst defensive line they've ever had. And had Derek Brown been healthy last season, obviously that would not have been the case, but it was. The interior, it's fixed. And that was the one area I have been talking to you all about that I wanted to see addressed more than any on this defensive roster. Because if you cannot get any pressure up front, you cannot control the line of scrimmage, you have no chance. And look at last offseason, and they've done it. Last year, on that first day of the legal negotiating period, they threw out $169 million total on the interior of the offensive line, on Robert Hunt and on Damian Lewis, and instantly fixed the offensive line. And we had wondered, as we had conversations here on the show, could they do that this offseason? Could they immediately fix the defensive line? If we're just going to focus on the beef in the interior, there's no way they have not done that. You bring back a top 5 guy off of injury. You sign someone who, in Wharton, has been an excellent interior defensive rusher. And then you bring in Bobby Brown III to be a run stopper with A'Shawn Robinson coming back, assuming that Shy Tuttle's back. He's in a backup role. LeBron Ray, who was terrible for them last year, they brought him back, but he's going to be in a backup role. And I would think that if they're going to throw like a third rush group out there, a third line group out there, maybe it's going to be him, Bobby Brown, as in Ray, Bobby Brown the third, and then Shy Tuttle. Probably a better way to succeed than it was a year ago and in the year prior when he was out there. So the depth for this defensive line, the talent level for this defensive line, especially on the interior, has improved dramatically in the 6.5 hours, the legal negotiating period for the Panthers. I mean, this has got me jacked, obviously excited, because I've sat here and I keep a tally. The Panthers are 19-59 since I've been doing this show. So anytime anyone comes up to me saying, oh, you're being negative, I tell them the team's 19-59. You sit your ass here every freaking Sunday, every single day, talk about this team, and they've got 19-59, and you come tell me how to react to what they've done. You go to those games every year growing up with your dad and watch them be terrible, to be great, to be mid, and all that, and then you come talk to me. I don't want to hear any of it. But this has got me excited about what this team could be. And I was already excited knowing that Bryce Young had turned things around. And yeah, I know I came out and said Bryce is going to be done and all that, just going off history, but he turned it around. And thank God for the car accident and no one getting hurt. Of course, Andy Dalton missed out of his thumb, but that led him getting back another opportunity. And how he played in his final 9 games was magnificent, especially week 18 against Atlanta. So to finally have stability there at quarterback, to have a running back in Chuba Hubbard who got extended and played his ass off last year, to have some promising young receivers and Thielen coming back, you got to add still to that group, and to be able to get an offensive line back, especially now that Corbett's back, and you got Mays coming back, Moton, all those guys back together. Brady Christensen, probably the only one from last year who will not return to Carolina, pretty much guaranteed at this point in time, as he should probably have better opportunities elsewhere, knowing that teams need offensive linemen all the time. You can't help but be excited about what this offense can do, taking another step if they can add some more receiving talent, of course. But defensively, you had Brown, you had Horn to work with. And you had to do right by Horn, and they've done that. And you had some nice pieces there, like Ashawn Robinson who can help you out. You look at the inside linebacker duo of Josie Jewell and Trevin Wallace, feel good about what they can be. Maybe not the best pair in the NFL, certainly, but I think they can be a solid duo for you. But now you add these pieces on the interior. Like, that's where it starts up front. And Dan Morgan said 2 weeks ago, if you can't win the line of scrimmage, you don't have a chance in this league. And Jaycee Horn said it last year. If you can't stop the run, you don't have a chance at all at stopping anybody in this league. And there's no reason when you add these guys and Brown, and even Wharton is not really a run stopper. When you add Brown to the equation, Brown the third, Bobby Brown the third, you add Derek Brown back in there, Ashawn Robinson, you have Josie Jewell back healthy, you have Tre'von Wallace back healthy, and hell, Tre'von Moehrig as a sure tackler coming up at safety, and JC is a willing tackler as well. Really and Jadeveon Clowney coming back. No reason this should be a bottom third run defense again in 2025. They've improved, I think, that much in just one day by getting Bobby Brown the third, but also getting Derek Brown back and bringing in Tre'von Moehrig. Thank God, because I cannot watch another season of them giving up 200 yards on the ground every single week. 6 straight games in the year, they did that, y'all. Unacceptable, but this right here absolutely is acceptable. Great work so far by Dan Morgan and by Brant Tillis. Okay, more moves I want to talk about. It's going to be a long show. They're always going to be long. I know Locked On tells me only go like 34 minutes top. Sorry, guys. It's just not going to be short when all this news is coming out, especially when this team is finally making some moves that have you thinking pretty bright about the future, especially in this division that's still wide open. Looking at it, they added an edge rusher. They got Vikings former edge rusher Patrick Jones II, a 2-year deal worth up to $20 million. Career high 7 sacks last year in Minnesota, has 12 sacks in his career. So he had 1 the year prior in 2023, 4 before that. So really broke out last year. Did battle a knee injury over the final month plus of the season, missing a week 14 game before coming back, and then missing week 18, and then in the wild card loss against the Rams. His PFF grade last year, 55.8. That was 94th. Run defense grade, 69.4. That was 31st out of 116. So nice to see that as well. Pass rush grade, 50.7, 105th out of 109 edge rushers. And then he had 24 total pressures and 315 pass rush snaps. But again, 24 total pressures, but 7 sacks. So when he got pressure, he got home. Juxtapose that with Jadeveon Clowney and DJ Wooden last year. Clowney, who did play basically a full season, missed, I think, 4 games, had 44 pressures and 346 pass rushing snaps, 5.5 sacks. Wooden, 26 pressures and 229 pass rush snaps, 4 sacks, and would have been very close to the numbers he had in his final year in Minnesota had he been healthy the entire season, I would think. So you look at it, The pass rush grade, not that great. Total pressures compared to the pass rush snaps, not that great. But when he did get pressure a third of the time, he got home for the most part, that being Patrick Jones II. Looking at this move, it doesn't necessarily move the needle much for me. He's kind of similar to what DJ Wonnum was last year, a guy who had shown promise, had a nice season. Now, Wonnum had 8 sacks 2 years prior to 2023, so he's shown to do it multiple times. But a guy coming off injury, and it seems to be less significant than the one that certainly that Wonnum ended up having to deal with the blood clot later on. About a guy who you're going to bet on, give a little bit of money, not a ton that's going to kill you. You can probably get out of it after a year, much like they could have done with DJ Wonnum, but they're not doing that, of course. This is somebody who can help elevate the floor. He's not going to necessarily, elevate the ceiling of this edge rusher group, but you now have him, that being Patrick Jones II, Jadeveon Clowney, DJ Wonnum, and I would still think at this point in time, just looking at things, at 8, you're getting an edge rusher. That's how I look at it right now. At 8, an edge rusher, and that's a guy for the future, as Clowney's probably going to play his last year coming up here in Carolina, maybe his last year period in the NFL, but we'll see. Certainly should be his last year as a Panther unless he just has like a breakout season again and is worth keeping around in 2026, which I don't foresee happening. But the edge rusher group got a little bit better. It's still not overwhelmingly good and still a bottom group. They're going to have to add a significant talent at 8th overall, or just period in the NFL draft coming up next month in April. What else do they need to add? I would think wide receiver, looking at that market as, let me go ahead and look at my phone real quick while I'm live up here with y'all. 404 of y'all with me right now. So appreciate, again, every single one of you who are on live with me on the show. No receivers. I have not seen anybody. Yeah, I've not seen any of that. So I think that they're going to be trying to get a receiver. I don't know if they're going to be able to get a wide receiver 1. I think those hopes have gone out the window, considering a lot of guys, and this has just been free agency as a whole for the majority of the teams in the NFL, that guys have decided just to stay with the current team instead of testing the market. T. Higgins, he had no choice. They slapped the franchise tag on him. They could potentially tag and trade him away, which if that happens, I don't know if Carolina has the space to do it now, but I would love to see them be in on that. Hollywood Brown was not going to be number 1, but he would add speed, which they desperately need. He's staying in Kansas City for a second year. Chris Godwin, probably always a pipe dream, kind of like Mike Evans last year. He's staying in Tampa Bay, and apparently it took $20 million less to stay there instead of going to New England to help out Drake May. Deebo Samuel, he was traded to the Commanders. Devontae Adams signed with the Rams. DK Metcalf was traded to the Steelers, and that's one I want to touch on momentarily. As I know we were talking about that last week, talked about that briefly with Mike on the show on Sunday. The Steelers sent a 2025 second-round pick that was number 52 to Seattle and then signed him to a 5-year, $150 million contract. And we had the conversation, $30 million per year. That's what DK was going to look for, and that's what DK got. And a second-round pick, I'm sure people are thinking, like, why could it have been Carolina? And Carolina's only picking at 57. It's only 5 spots behind what Pittsburgh gave up. I would have loved to have seen it had they done that, been a 2026 second-round pick instead of the 2025 second-round pick there at 57th overall. Dan Morgan likes to have a pick in every single round. And Mike on the show yesterday, Mike K, the Charlotte Observer, was talking about the Panthers really need to draft and need to keep their draft picks this year. And yeah, it's unfortunate because it really feels to me that the only way they're going to get a wide receiver 1 again after getting rid of DJ Moore, and it's possible they can trade for someone, certainly, but the best way it's going to have to be drafting and developing. And I don't honestly see anyone on the roster right now who is going to be that. I think Leggett can be a solid number 2. I don't think Coker's going to be that number 1. And then I don't know. The draft class I don't love coming up here with the wide receivers. It's certainly possible that one of these guys, maybe multiple of them, end up being a number 1 receiver down the road. And if that's the case, hopefully it's here in Carolina. I just don't know. Cooper Kupp's still available. He's an older player. I don't know if you want another one of those guys, a little redundant. Now he can play outside more than Adam Thielen can. Stephon Diggs still available. Kind of good on that. Keenan Allen, sure, as far as he's from the state, would be nice to add a veteran presence, but he's older. He's over the hill for sure. Amari Cooper, I'm good there. Tyler Lockett could make sense again, kind of redundant with Adam Thielen being here and Coker best in the slot. DeAndre Hopkins, I guess, can make sense. But Darius Slayton, that's the name that I've also heard. Like the 3 names I was really given were Milton Williams, Darius Slayton, and Tre'von Moehrig. And they were very close to getting 2 of those. No, Moehrig's, of course, here in Carolina. Williams, the bidding war that Carolina just wasn't going to give him $26 million. I think they made the right decision by not doing that, especially now that they had been able to go out there and sign both Bobby Brown III and Tershawn Wharton for what they would have been giving him. So they'd be able to go out there and to pay two guys, and it's the amount that you're going to give one guy actually less than what they were going to give. They would have had to have given Milton Williams. As Williams was what did he get? He ended up getting it's right, I have it written down. He got what did he get? 104 mil. So you look at Bobby Brown, it's $21 million. And then you look at Wharton, he's getting, so it's okay. It's 27 max. It's 54 million max. So what's the math on that? 81. Is that what it is? Yeah. So 81 mil. So still 19 million, 25 million less. So, oh no, what's that? 104 minus 81, so 23. So $23 million less that they ended up giving both of those guys combined than what Milton Williams is getting from the Patriots. So smart business there. Smart. They want to be aggressive, but smart. That's what Dan Morgan talked about. But again, back to the wide receiver market. Yeah, it didn't work out with DK. I wonder, considering they didn't want to give Milton Williams $26 million, and I can understand it when you have Derek Brown and you already kind of have your money wrapped up in that position. You go out there, get two guys for the price of one and actually less than the price of one. Did you want to spend $30 million for DK Metcalf? And I'm guessing they probably didn't want to. So Darius Slayton, that's the name really to look at moving forward here throughout the rest of the legal negotiating period heading into free agency. Tommy Tremble, Austin Corbett, both those guys are back. Tommy signed a 2-year deal worth up to $16 million, including $8 million guaranteed. Think that's a fair deal for Tommy. I said even last year, going in his final year, would like to see him come back. I feel like he fits in that tight end room. He's not going to be a pass catcher at a high level like a lot of people hope when he came out of Notre Dame. He really wasn't that in South Bend, so hard to expect him to be that in the NFL, as this is a tough position to transition into. But he does help as a run blocker and can be a solid secondary tight end receiving option. Now you want to have other guys touch the ball well before Tommy Tremble, but we've seen what Tommy's been able to do, even hurdling guys and showing that athleticism. Then Austin Corbett signed a 1-year deal with a base value of $3 million. It can be up to $7 million. So if he wins the job, would expect if he plays all these games that he would probably get that $7 million. So him and Cade Mays combined getting just under $7 million, and that's good. To have two guys on 1-year deals, both getting just about $7 million. Corbett, if he plays well, he could get extended for like another big, not a huge deal, but probably another 3-year deal after this year if things work out. He's still young enough to do that, and hope is he can stay healthy. And if he wins the job, great. If he doesn't, great. You have depth there on the offensive line. But looking at my offseason to-do list now, the Panthers have checked out the box of extending Jaycee Horn. They've re-signed Cade Mays. They've re-signed Austin Corbett. Now, they have not re-signed Eddie Pinheiro. I do not believe they're going to, but they need to get a kicker. They also need to get a punter, of course. I don't know if they're going to re-sign Johnny Hecker or not. That's something to monitor. I talked about re-signing Mike Jackson. Got to get a number 2 corner regardless. So that's still a position they may look at in the draft. So TBD on all that, but Mike Jackson would not guess that he would be a priority for anybody, including Carolina. Not to say that he can't get signed later tonight. Maybe he does, and maybe he has. Again, let me just go ahead and check the phone. So this is not outdated, and I'm not seeing anything. So, okay. So we'll see what happens there. Would like to see him come back. They re-signed Tommy. Signing a number 1 wide receiver feels like it's going to be difficult unless a T. Higgins trade becomes available, but that's still going to be a lot of money, and I don't know how much it's going to cost to get T. Higgins, maybe the same as DK, and in veteran backup running back, or they could draft one. They acquired a safety, and they got 2 defensive tackles. Feeling good about that. So looking at the defense right now, as that was the main priority for Carolina on Monday, the first day of the legal negotiating period, they've gone out there and looking at the defensive front. They have Derek Brown. They have Bobby Brown III, Ashawn Robinson, Tre'Von Wharton, Shy Tuttle as their top 5 rotational guys. And you got to feel really good about the versatility there where Derek can play all 3 downs. Ashawn can play all 3 downs after looking what he did. You can have Bobby play on obvious run situations. You can have Shy Tuttle come in there, rotate as well, and he'd be in a better spot than he was last year and the year prior to that, asked to come in and really be a true starter, a difference maker. Then you can bring in Tre'Von Wharton as a guy who can come in, or Tershawn Wharton, who can come in and be a guy who can be on those obvious passing downs and be a nice interior 3 technique, or bring him out even on the outside, the edge rush. So love that. Outside linebacker, Clowney, one of them, Patrick Jones a second, and because Gerald Vero's still here, DJ Johnson unfortunately will get snaps, but that could change depending on how things play out in the draft. Josie Jewell, Trevor Wallace there at inside linebacker, Jaycee Horn back, got Shaw Smith-Wade at nickel, need to find a second corner. Tre'von Moehrig at safety, Damani Richardson penciling him in there. Possible that they double dip there at safety. And Mike K believes they could draft one as well. So that's where things sit as the defense is being rebuilt, and cannot foresee what I've talked about right now, what we've seen and what's on paper as being the worst defense in the NFL again next season, unless they have significant amount of injuries. Injuries were a problem this year. They were a problem prior to that. But talent level was also a major issue, and the talent level has clearly been upgraded. Re-signing Jaycee or extending Jaycee to a record deal, bringing in Bobby Brown III, bringing in Tershawn Wharton, bringing in Patrick Jones, and bringing in Tre'von Moehrig. The Panthers got better on defense on Monday, and now they need to get better on offense and add some pieces and help out Bryce Young and take back the NFC South. Because right now, looking at what Brent Tillis and Dan Morgan and Dave Canales are building, and the rest of this division, it ain't crazy. Tampa would still be the favorite to me right now, but it ain't crazy at all. Good, strong start for Carolina. And yes, a fun first day of the legal negotiating period. That's going to wrap up this edition of Locked On Panthers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, hosted by yours truly, Julian Council. Y'all, again, subscribe or follow the show right here on YouTube or wherever you listen to your favorite podcast. Can be live on YouTube throughout the week, so be sure to subscribe so you never miss any of those live episodes. And be sure to follow me, Julian Council, over on Twitter and on Blue Sky at Julian Council, where on Fridays here on the show, I answer weekly Friday mailbag questions. All you got to do is either at me or DM me over on Twitter or at me over on Blue Sky to get those questions into me around Wednesday. Let's give it a couple of days before, because there's still going to be some moves that they make, and I will answer them on Friday. But in the meantime, be safe, be happy, be whole as always, and forever keep pounding. And I'll talk to y'all on Tuesday night as we'll break down day 2 of the legal negotiating period for your Carolina Panthers.